I'm Samantha Brown, professional organizer, decluttering specialist, and business coach. I created Pro Organizers Coach podcast to empower you to reach new heights in your business. I am on a mission to build a supportive sisterhood of passionate professional organizers. So whether you're a seasoned pro or you're just getting started, this podcast is for you. Welcome back to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. On today's episode, I have something a little different, but I'm super excited. So we have actually got an author on the podcast today. She has written a book called Jesus by Her Side. Her name is Cody. I want to talk to her also about how whenever God is helping you or guiding you to take the next steps that you need to do to then help others. For her, it was writing a book. For us, it's our organizing business. And she also has a full-time job and at the same time is writing on the side, which I know a lot of us are starting our organizing businesses on the side. So we're going to touch on a lot of different topics today. But first, thank you, Cody, so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So first, tell us about the book real quick.
Yeah. So it's Jesus through the women in the Gospels. And so what I did is I just went through it. It started out as a series of blog posts. And the reason I started writing them is because as I was reading through the Gospels and seeing the way Jesus ministered to women and the way that he encountered Mary and Martha or the woman at the well or the bleeding woman, unfortunately, many of them don't have names. So you end up calling them things like the bleeding woman. But just seeing the way that he saw them, the way that he took time to minister to them, and the realization personally, that was still his heart toward me. That he still had, like with the bleeding woman, for example, she comes to him for physical healing and people are rushing him to get somewhere else. And he takes the time to turn around to her and say, like, who touched me? Who are you? What is it that you need? And just the way he saw her and took time with her is his heart for us still as women. And so the idea is that in looking at him and in looking at the way this man of Christ ministered to and walked among those ancient women, we're able to see the heart of God toward us and hopefully then recognize his less visible presence, but just as real presence in our life through the Holy Spirit. And so the hope is that we will look at this man of Christ and begin to recognize the Spirit of Christ, the same heart and he has the same intentions toward us that he had when he was a man on the earth.
100%. And I love that. And it also, like every time I go to my organizing sessions on the way there, always, I'm like, all right, God, use me as like your hands and your feet and like your mouthpiece and whatever this person needs to hear or whatever I need to do to help them. And I think that also is a prime example of, we say like he saw the least of these, when really it's not just the least of these. I mean, it is, but it's everyone he encountered along the way. And I think that we forget about that part. We forget about seeing sometimes the person right in front of us and how we can help that person. And so that's why I love as an organizer, because it's hard, like at Home Depot or something, to really get to know someone and like help them in some way. Where when you're in their home and they've opened up their home to you, the way that you're able to comfort them or give them guidance or let them vent in a way that maybe they wouldn't to the people in their lives, or, whatever that weight is that's weighing them down, helping them release those things. Like that is my heart for my clients when I go in to help them. And so I love that this book like shows how he was towards women, because that honestly feels like what he uses me for on a daily basis with my clients.
Yeah. And as we begin to recognize his heart toward each one of us, it's much easier than to minister out of that same love to the women around us or the men, whoever it is. But
right. Mainly women for the most part, at least in my world. Like it's hard to minister to a man. I do sometimes. For the most part, a lot of my clients that reach out to me, they are like overwhelmed women with so much clutter, so much stuff, so much stress. And it's just the world we live in today where back then the world they lived in, obviously, like they had to walk everywhere and just different things that we're struggling with today. I still think I would take today maybe over back then, but I love how, Jesus by her side and then finding the nearness of God through the eyes of the women in the Gospels. I love how you took one step at a time where you said that it started out as like a blog post and just something that God was like, okay, just do this one little piece of content essentially. And then it ended up becoming the actual book. So could you talk a little bit more about how one thing transitioned into another?
Sure. So I actually started writing it 10 years ago, just as a series of blog posts. And really, what the reason I started writing them, writing to me has always been an outlet, just how I process things, how I think things through. And so, honestly, it started out, I say it started as a blog post. It almost started as a journal entry that then became a blog post, just in processing through in my own life things that were going on and ways that the Lord was meeting me in those stories of the women in the Gospels. And then I'd share one here and there, and they always really resonated with women. I am not a famous blogger by any stretch of the imagination, but anybody who read it was like they had more traction than other things I would put out there. And so on the one hand, it was this is the way that the Lord is meeting me and ministering to me. And then on the other hand, there's this piece that was like, well, this does seem to reach people in a way that other things are not reaching them. And so between those two things, I then started getting a little more intentional about, okay, let's find another story of a woman in the Gospels and see how Jesus met. Then I started doing it a little bit more intentionally and put them up on the blog, shared them on social media, which is a whole different ball game of how do you promote and what. I know y'all probably deal with the same question marks. That's how we share things in this world. And so and again, like they would just resonate with people and get responses that other things didn't get. And so finally, I think through a series, I can't remember exactly the order, but about a year and a half ago is when I really decided, you know what, I want to compile this into, it was strewn all over the place. There was 3 stories here. There was one blog post here. And so I just took a year really and pulled them together, refined them, added some to them, and I went through a company that helped me self-publish essentially.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think some of those little golden nuggets as you were talking are that no matter what we're doing, whether it's starting a business, whether it's no matter what it is, it takes time. I think a lot of us think that, like, that whole thing of like overnight success or overnight whatever, it is, that saying of like, yeah, you see me today and you think it's an overnight success, but it's a journey that started 10 years ago or whatever. That quote is so true
Right.
because it really does take those steps. It also takes sometimes it's not the right timing for things and being willing to be like, okay, well, right now this is working a little bit, but let me use it for this thing. And then also paying attention to what gets traction. I think that's
Mhm.
huge when you're running a business that needs to be seen online, of taking the time to be like, hey, so these posts or these whatever, or these blog entries on my website, or whatever the case may be, none of these really resonated, but oh, this one right here, people really seem to respond to. So maybe let's dive deeper into that thing and figuring out where that can take you. Because it's not like, as a professional organizer, I say this all the time. It's not like we're a heart surgeon where we went to school, they taught us exactly what to do. It's the same thing every time and then rinse and repeat. That is not what this is. It's a very much like, okay, you have to figure out who you are, then you have to figure out who you want to help, then you have to figure out how to become a business owner, then you have to figure out how to work with clients. Then like there's a lot of steps to this. But once you get to that place and you find those things that work for you, then you can start to rinse and repeat. But I love that and it's like what you said, where once you realize, oh, this is working, here, let me dive deeper into it and find some more stories and see if those will continue to resonate with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then also on the other side of it, nowadays we know that a lot of us can self-publish or publish through Amazon. Like there's so many more options than there was back in the day. And so I think it's very similar as an organizer where, there's so many different routes you can take. Like some people start doing speaking engagements, or some people write a book, or some people like run a team. Some people just do it on their own. Like there's so many ways that it can go. I'd love for you to talk though a little bit about at what point did you realize, and maybe it was the point of, okay, so this is getting some traction. Let me dive deeper. Once you committed to that, was it like, did it start flowing a lot easier, or did the work get harder, or how did that play out for you?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think one of the things that I've always struggled with is thinking that once I figure it out, then it's just going to go like you're saying, then it's just going to take off and go. And what my journey has been more like with writing, because writing is also not a very conventional pathway. Like, why didn't I go into banking or something where it's like numerical and you know what you're supposed to do and you do it. And if you do it well, you get to move up, but writing is not like that. And so one of the things I've struggled with is just because something isn't successful in the eyes of the world or successful in the ways that I would compare it doesn't mean it's not of value. And things are going to be different size in writing a blog. Like maybe 200 people read my blog posts and 3,000 people were reading someone else's. But of those 200, like they may not have been reading the other people's. Like, so I think just reminding myself that if I'm being faithful to the Lord and what I feel like He's asked me to do, and if I'm being as faithful as I know to how to be to the people around me, and because that's what gets traction is the things that are reaching people, whether it's organizing, whether it's writing, whatever it is, those things that people resonate with, or it's because we hit on a need and we hit on maybe a place where they needed to be encouraged or a place where they needed to be reminded that they're not in something alone. And that's why it gains traction. And so remembering that like that's how we measure our success is, are we doing the thing we're called to do as well as we know how to do it? And are we serving the people like you said a while ago, like right in front of us? Those people who are right in front of us, are we serving them in a way that is valuable and meaningful? And then letting the rest of the details take care of themselves. And everybody's in a different financial place, so sometimes there's this pressure of like, oh, this has to succeed. And at least from my experience, the more I took that off of me, and the more, if you do have another job or some other form of stable income, then it's a little easier to rest in this doesn't have to be an overnight success. But I think that it's finding the balance in whatever specific circumstance we're in of how do I pursue this with as much energy as I can and have, and as much intentionality as I can give it, but how do I also be wise and make sure that I'm not putting so much pressure on myself for this to be an overnight financial success?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that was definitely a mic drop moment, because I was actually just talking to one of my members in the group membership last night. And I could tell during our group coaching session that she felt a little, I don't want to say discouraged, but I could just tell, like, you could tell, especially as you get to know people, when something's a little maybe not
Yeah.
great. And so I called her after we got off the group setting, and I was like, hey, I just want to check in with you and see how you're feeling. And long story short, we talked for a few minutes, and the point that it got to was that when she's posting on Instagram, she's also then seeing what looks like other people succeeding on Instagram. And
Mhm.
that comparison of, instead of us looking at, hey, where was I a few months ago versus where I am now, and look and staying in our lane, looking at our stuff, and not allowing ourselves to get sidetracked by, like you said, maybe this other blog or this other organizer that looks like they have it all together. It's very hard to not let that discourage us. They may look like everything's perfect, but over time, I realized the ones that make it look like everything is like perfect, they have a team of people making them look that perfect and with that many followers. And it's comparing apples to oranges essentially. Like we're over
Mhm.
here trying to do it on our own, or maybe with one other person. And of course, it's going to take us a little bit longer. And when we compare ourselves, of course, that discouragement and that judgment on ourselves, and it's hard to continue to even help the people right in front of us when we're discouraged ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that discouragement is probably the hardest thing as in any business where you're working primarily alone or on your own trying to make something work. That discouragement is hard to overcome. But what I finally decided is like this is what I want to do and I'm going to find a way to do it. And if that means I have to do 8 other things at the same time, this is still the one thing like, for me, if you told me I had to stop writing, I would not really know what to do with myself. But I also have had to take the pressure off myself as, like, this doesn't have to be a career in the way that a lot of people think it should look. But I'm gonna do it in whatever capacity I can do it in. And that looks different in different seasons. Right now, it coincides with my job a lot more, and so I do have a more natural outlet for some of the other things I'm writing, but that hasn't always been the case. There have been seasons where it's like, is anybody reading this? What's the point of writing it? But it's like this thing inside me that just like felt compelled to do it. And
Yeah.
and that has kept me going when I on the outside I'm like, well, I don't know what the point of this is other than I just really like doing it.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same for me, even like with the podcast and with the membership. I hit this place back in the summer, which the podcast has been around for about a year now. And then the membership we started back on January 1st. So at this point of recording, we're literally about to hit our 1 year anniversary of the membership. But back in, I don't know, like June, July, I had just moved. It was summer, so a lot of people weren't showing up to the group coaching sessions. I was putting all of this effort in, and I literally was having like one person, and it was the same one person show up to each of my group coaching calls. And I got to this point where I'm like, maybe they don't want this anymore. Like, maybe even though I felt called to this, maybe this isn't what I'm meant to do, or maybe I misunderstood what God was telling me. Like maybe I should pivot this thing. But then I was like, I had to take some time by myself with God, recenter, and be like, all right, God, am I supposed to be doing this? And if I am, then how do I pivot this thing to where it can actually reach who it's meant to reach? And if I need to struggle through it some more, I will. That's okay. Just
Right.
help me know that I'm like on the right path. And I literally had this moment where God was like, do you want this? And if you do, I need you to like double down. Like, I don't know why the word double down kept coming to me, but it was like double down on it and, or just quit and like give it up essentially was like my two options. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to, no, you have called me to this. It doesn't seem to be working right now, but that's okay because I'm going to trust that when you called me to this and the fact that I know I'm meant to be doing this, I'm going to continue. And I literally took a few weeks. I revamped some stuff. I relooked at some things and was like, "Oh, well maybe instead of because I used to do like all these coaching calls at all these different times thinking I was giving people options. I was overwhelming them and I was giving them too many options. And so I'm like, all right, that's it. It's every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when we meet. And then I started doing workshops and a few other things to bring in more value. And it turned around so quickly
Huh.
that, and now probably at least half to two-thirds of the women show up to the majority of the things I do that are in the membership. And it took just a month or two for it to turn around. But I know it was because of that moment of the Holy Spirit being like, okay, are you going to stay committed when it looks like it's not going to work?
Yeah.
Or are you going to let it go? And it's almost like that the hardest or the darkest comes before the dawn, or the dark becomes before, like,
Yeah.
it sometimes does get the hardest right before the breakthrough because you've got to push through that last little thing for to start seeing some traction.
Yeah, and just that resolve. We can't do it in our own strength, but it does take the application of some of our strength to do things and to be flexible enough to say, okay, maybe this thing I was trying needs to be a little bit different than the way I was doing it at first. and just that
Yeah.
constant learning and remembering, I think, also that we're not in it alone. Like that we're not the only person who has ever felt this way. And probably I joked about bankers. Probably people that are working in banking don't feel like it's as clear as it looks to me from the outside. Like in whatever career path we find ourselves in, whatever circumstances we find ourselves, it always looks better to not be that person. Like it looks better to the person who isn't having to actually walk it. Because when
Yes.
we're walking through things, writing a book has a lot of times where you're in for a while, my self-discipline required me to just like not do my hair on mornings I was supposed to be writing because then I wasn't tempted to go do anything else. I was like, well, my hair is dirty. I can't leave anyway. I might as well keep writing. Which it sounds silly, but it did get me through a few weeks where it was like I washed my hair in the middle of those weeks, but a few of the to be clear, I did not go a few weeks without getting but you know what I mean? Like for a
Yeah.
while it just took like, you know what? I just have to have no other option in order to get this done.
Yeah, and
And
honestly, it's
it's
the
not
same
very
thing.
glamorous.
It is right, and that's the thing is it is not very glamorous, and on social media and all these places where we see the parts we see look glamorous, and then you get into the throes of the business and the daily grind and figuring these things out, and I have days where it's the same as you, but the problem, if I stay in my PJs, I know I'm not gonna get anything done. I have to, like, throw on my clothes so I feel like I'm quote unquote going to work to come downstairs into my office to have the energy to get work done. But I would prefer to stay upstairs in my PJs watching
Yeah.
Netflix or something. Like, but it's doing those things that we don't really want to be doing, but we know that by making that sacrifice, like the outcome is going to be worth it
Mm,
once we do the thing that we're supposed to be doing.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
discipline is a hard like being self-disciplined as a writer, business owner, whatever, like is probably the toughest thing besides the discouragement, for sure.
Yeah. And it's also hard because you don't have a super clear we might have clear to-do lists, but it's never like every box is checked and now it's the end of the day. Or at least that's how I feel, and I imagine
Ever.
it's very similar. Like, it's like you could keep working all day, or you could never start working that day, and really, you're the only one you're accountable to, and
Mhm.
so it's hard, on the one hand, to get that self-discipline going and go, "Okay, no, I'm just gonna do this thing today." But then there's also the side of we do still need rest. We do still need for me, one of the things that has most helped with my self-discipline is I do not work on Fridays. And I am pretty disciplined about that. Like I have had to guard I work in ministry, so I work on Sundays. Is why Friday is the day that I'm like, no, Saturdays I can if I have to get something done, I'll get it done. But Friday I guard and that has helped me on other days because it's like, no, I have this day where I'm not going to feel this way. And
Yeah. I
and for
think
me
that's
that's
and that's huge.
a practical way to help with the like discipline that it does require on the other days is just going today I'm not going to feel that like because otherwise it's just always nagging at the back of my head of like you could do this or you could do this or you could should do this and it's like no on Fridays but on Fridays I don't and it's been
Yeah.
really helpful on the other days to have something to aim for also.
No, I think that's huge where for me it's Sundays like where but even recently like there for a little bit like the day has switched is my point over time based on what season I'm in.
Yeah,
But
right.
but having a day and there for a while I had to have 2 days because I was so like go and certain long periods and then so I have a family. I've got to do dinner and I've got kids and I got to do all this other stuff and
Yeah.
the other thing I had to learn is when it hits like 5 p.m., okay, let's shut everything down. It's time to like go upstairs and be a part of my family. Or like you said, I would end up working halfway through the night and it's like midnight before I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because when you get in those moments, and a lot of times it really is hard to know is it better for me to continue and like get all this work done that we should quote unquote be doing or that we think other people are doing? And what I've learned over time doing all these interviews and talking to all of these people, everyone has some sort of like time management system in their life that helps them. It doesn't have to look the same always, but it just needs to
Right.
be something that you
Yeah.
have in place, which you would if you worked at a regular job. You would have certain times you were at work and certain times you're at home. And then recently I was talking to a lady that it was super helpful to hear from her, where she was saying that just checking in with yourself in the different areas of your life. Like, am I doing things for fun? Am I
Mm.
doing things with my family? Am I doing things? Because people talk about this like work life balance, which is this pie in the sky idea, truly, because it doesn't exist for anyone.
And no one even knows what
But
it
yeah, no one has a clue what it means. We're like, oh, work life balance. It sounds good, but where
Yeah.
did that come from?
Yeah, is there a
Um,
scale we can test it on? Yeah.
Right, yeah. But I think it's finding and knowing it's okay to find our own balance and not, again, comparing that to what we think someone else is doing or not doing.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure as a writer, like, you have to like, all of these things. That's why I knew when I, like, saw your book and how amazing it is, and the fact that even being in ministry, like, you're a helper, which is what we are as organizers. Like, every one of us that want to start an organizing business, it's because we're coming from a place of we have a helper's heart. We want to help people.
Yeah.
And when you're helping other people in ministry with a book, an organizer, whatever, you also have to guard your emotional well being and like your spiritual energy and all of those things. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of times I find myself, or I used to, I try very hard not to now, but I used to find myself almost bringing home the energy of like
Mm.
whatever person I've helped that day,
Yeah.
because it's deep stuff whenever you start dealing with someone and they've either lost a loved one or they've whatever that thing is. And just figuring out those things of like, okay, what are my boundaries and how do I protect myself, whether it's time, energy, spiritually, whatever it is. I think that honestly is the biggest tip to having a successful and healthy, like, work from home business, a woman in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't it is there's always gonna be the temptation. For me, the temptation is just like, should I do one more thing? And I am single, I don't have a family, and so I sometimes think like, well, I could keep this isn't gonna hurt anybody. But the thing is, like, even if we're single or even if we're married but don't have kids, like whatever it is, like we still are not created to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like that is not the way we were created. We're not created to we're created, yes, to share one another's burdens, but not to like take on someone else's life. And
Right.
that just takes the that for me that just is like a matter of going like, "Hey Lord, well that lunch is over and like I give that person to you and I just here's the needs she shared with me and I am leaving them to you to meet. Like, convict me if there's an area where I need to be practically helpful, but otherwise, I am just gonna move on because I have to go do the next thing. And
Yeah.
learning how to do that in a way that is compassionate, but also realistic for the amount of burden we can actually bear for someone else.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge because even with our clients, like recently there was a podcast episode I released where she was talking about, as organizers, a lot of us feel like we should give discounts and we should like discount our stuff because of this, that, and the other. And understanding that, like, hey, if you want to gift someone or you come across someone that you're like, hey, they really do need this for free, or setting up some kind of parameters of like, I'll pick one person per month or per quarter that I give a free session to as like almost like a tithe or as a way to minister to others, compared to let me just discount my services to everyone, which then
Yeah.
just gets me frustrated. It gets like it just becomes a hot mess. And what I loved about what she said was that it's okay to charge full price because it's actually helping them. Because the more, what I've learned is the more skin in the game that people have, like money wise or
Oh, yeah.
emotion, the better and the easier it is for them, because then they're more willing to do the work. because they've
Mm.
already paid for this thing. So they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna get them out of this."
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that, finding those things in our lives, and it doesn't have to look the same for any of us whatsoever, but finding that place with God where you're like, okay, God, what is it that I want to do that helps? But then, like you said, but also protects me. Like, what do I need to have? Whether it's like a prayer, like the way I pray on the way to sessions and on the way home from sessions. Because there for a while, I would pray on the way to sessions because I was so worried about my clients. Not worried, but I wanted to make sure they got a good experience. So I
Yeah.
would leave my own emotions at the door. I would go in, I would pray the whole time I was there. I'd pray with them. But it wasn't dawning on me that I was then leaving and not doing exactly what you just said of like, hey, Lord, let me leave this. Like I'm giving them to you instead of, I guess I just would just carry it with me. And then I'd be home and I'd be arguing with a kid or my husband or whoever, and they'd be like, "What is wrong? Like, what happened today?" And it finally like clicked, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to also then pray after my sessions, not
Mm.
just before, but
Yeah.
after." And that's it's okay to have those boundaries that protect ourselves. And God doesn't want us carrying all of that on our backs. Like he wants us to give it to him and trust him with those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes as women, we think that's not compassionate or that's not responsible or that's not but if it, or we get some sort of strange I do think sometimes we get some sort of strange value in feeling like we're overtaxed and we just care so much about so many people and like that's not really like that is not the way we were designed and that doesn't honor the Lord. That is just wearing us out. It's not helping anyone. It's not helping us. It's not helping the person. It's not somehow holier than the people who are not that way. But I think we think that, especially
I
culture
do.
feeds it. Like if it's not that, it's oh, I'm just so busy. Okay, you did that to your especially if we work for ourselves, like we did that to ourselves. Like so if we're
Oh,
complaining about how busy we are and we're our boss, like we have a bad boss and that boss is we need to talk to them. Like which and I know that there's a balance. I have struggled through this on my own. I'm not meaning it as a but I think that status symbol of like, I'm just so overworked. Okay, well, is there a way to put some different checks in my life that would make it so I'm not so overworked? For
yes.
me, the
Well,
past 2 weeks, I've been exhausted. And I'm like, this is not, I need to figure out what has gone, and I'm still not certain. I have no answer to this. Like, what has gotten off balance, out of balance that I need to go, okay, is there a boundary I need to put in place? Is there what is it that I need to let go of or pick up in order to make this a more sustainable rhythm in my life or rhythm
Yeah,
of
no, I
my
think
life?
that's huge. Yeah, and the reason I was laughing is because it's been the same for me, which we do have to look at seasons too. It is the holidays and people it's just chaotic in the
Right.
holidays. We have a lot of like for me, I just found out a couple days ago that oh, we're having Christmas at my house this year. And it's like no, 2 days before 4 days before Christmas,
Yeah.
but 2 days before they're coming over. And so there's a lot of these kind of outside factors,
And there's
but
going to be weeks and days where like things get out of control and we just have to roll with it.
yeah, but I was laughing at you saying that, like, we have a bad boss because I actually did something to myself recently that I didn't realize I was doing, and ever since then, I've been like, "God, I'm not complaining, but this is a lot." So, I have been creating a course, and I wanted to get it out by January 1st. I was on schedule, and as the beginning of December hit, it didn't look like I was gonna have many organizing sessions. And so I was like, "Oh, great. I can like set aside a couple of weeks like during this time since I'm not going to have that many sessions." And so I went on the podcast. I promoted January 1st is the day the course is going to be ready to go. The very next day, I get 3 different phone calls from women needing their homes organized before Christmas and or before the new year. And
Yeah.
so it was one of those moments where it was almost comical because I didn't have anything planned, and then the second I spoke it out of like, "Okay, the course will be ready by this time," then all of a sudden I got a bunch, but you can't complain that, "Oh my gosh, I have work that needs, because that the
Right.
bills are going to get paid. So like, I'm not complaining, but
Yeah.
I was like, it was just cracking me up where it's like, there's sometimes those things that happen because as organizers, that's, I think sometimes the problem is that it's not like a cleaning service where we work with the same clients all the time. So figuring out that balance of what does work for us and how many sessions do we actually need. And just because someone called us today doesn't mean we have to take that client on or that we have to put them in on our books for tomorrow. Like we can tell them, hey, I'm booked out this week. I can't start with you till next week, or whatever those things are that keep us mentally and physically aligned and healthy. And it all ended up working out just fine. Like it's fine. It's just literally when things like that happen, I'm like, all right, God, thank you.
This
Thank
is
you.
enough.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it, but I'm good. No more. Just for a moment. Let me get this course out because it's the first course I've ever done. So it's kind of like you with writing the book. It's more of the unknowns, like because you don't know how long something's going to take as you're recording or as you're getting it ready or as you're doing whatever those steps are. And same with a business, like certain things you don't know, but even those small things, like you said, of even if it's just, okay, the first step is I'm going to start with picking one day a week that I do nothing and I just allow myself to rest. Even if that is the next step and the only step that you choose to take for your mental health, then do that. And that alone, like you said, can be make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. So, real quick, and then we'll wind up. Tell them about. So, I know you've got your website. On the website, you have like a few Bible studies and stuff. Or like, tell us a little bit more about that.
So yeah, I've written several Bible studies and then I there's online teachings that go with them. So if you do it as for a small group or if you do it on your own, you can watch or listen to the teaching that goes with it. And the my hope behind Bible study guides is always just to lead women into the scriptures for themselves, to see what God's word says, to think about the way that applies to their life, to position us to really listen to what is the Lord saying to me through his word, and what is this teaching me about who he is and what is his character and what is his plan for this
Mm.
crazy world, and just
Yeah,
see his deep love. And so those are, yeah, those are available online and the book is also available there. But my website is codyandras.com.
and that's it's CODYAE or A. Hold that. It's CODYANDRAS.com. And then it'll also be in the show notes for sure for you all to click on that. But go follow Cody, go look at her stuff. Honestly, this has been fantastic. I love the like where it's going. I love that, everything that you've said from the fact that like not comparing ourselves to others, but then also like we had mentioned earlier about just like one step at a time. Like it's okay to take this thing one step at a time. Like and you were saying, I think it was maybe before we hit record, but that you didn't even know where this was going to lead back when you first started writing it. You just knew you were meant to be writing it. And so you chose to take that step. You followed God's leading. And then now it has turned into this. And sometimes it does take time for things to pan out the way they're meant to, but God always has a plan when he's telling us to do stuff in the season that we're in.
Yeah, yeah, he knows where we're headed even when we don't.
Right.
And he
Right. And
invites
we can
us
just
to
trust
cooperate
him.
with him, to take that next step, even if we're not sure what the one after that is gonna be, so it
Yeah.
does feel
Well,
like
and honestly, I think that's my favorite thing about God is that he literally like he meets us where we are and he helps us with the next one step. Like it's not here's the next 10, figure it out. It's hey, here's this next step. Let's do this first and this alone. And the other thing I love about God is even if I haven't like talked to him for a minute or I've been super busy, he always brings you right back where he left you off or like the last time that he was helping you. And then he's like, okay, let's remember this is where we left off. So let's pick back up here and keep on with this thing. Yeah, he's very consistent. And I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, listen, the Holy Spirit's a gentleman. He is not going to force himself on you. And so if you're not opening up and seeking him, he's not going to force his way in. And so you have to be willing, but when you are willing, he is definitely still there waiting on you to be
Yeah.
willing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Cody, so much. This has been such a good conversation.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
congrats on your book. Like, it's amazing. And for all of you listening, if you so feel inclined, please go get the book. Let's support Cody because she obviously has a lot more to share with the world as time goes on, just as we all do.
Yes. Well, thank you. It was great to be with you.
And for you listening, we will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. Go to proorganizerscoach.com to find all the ways that we can help you succeed in your business. Remember, you have the power to make a difference in people's lives through decluttering and organization. So keep honing your skills, embracing those challenges, and fostering connections. Girl, you've got this.